Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the fourth and final book of Mistborn Era 2, the seventh book in the saga overall. And yeah, we'll get right into this review here. So obviously this is a high fantasy review, or this is a high fantasy book. This is a fantasy western. You can kind of tell based on the cover that he's got a gun, or two guns, he's got a trench coat, they've got kind of different looking costumes. It's clearly more Western inspired, cowboy inspired, or industrial revolution era inspired. So it's fantasy western, technological advancements, again that whatever that word is that I can't say, industrial revolution timeline. It's also this one especially is fairly political in there's lots of politics going on in this world that are incorporated into the story. So Lost Metal, as I mentioned, is book. I've mentioned all of that stuff. This is the last book in the Mistborn Era 2, which I've already mentioned, and it wraps up the story nicely. This story of Wax and Wayne and their adventures in the world of Scadrial. There's a lot to love about this series and about this final book. I just quickly like to say though, if you're liking what you're seeing from an Erudite adventure, we'd really appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. So first off, I love westerns and I love historical fiction. So having a fantasy book with this type of setting is really just a lot of fun for me because it mixes things that I like and that I know a lot about with things that I like and I know a lot about, which is fantasy and history. So there's a lot that has happened in this book since the events of the Bands of Mourning, which is book 3. And really both the world and the politics have come a long way. Wax is in a different place in his life, as are his surrounding characters, meaning Steris, Wayne, and Marasi, or Marasi, or I don't know. I think I've always called it Marasi, and I think everybody else pronounces it Marasi, so whatever. Wayne is still Wayne. Obviously, we get so much more from him in this book, and as we have basically, let me think, he's been getting exponentially more information about him known as the books in the series have continued on. And this book obviously it's the last book in the series, so that kind of finalizes his story as well. We get the chance to continue his story that has been slowly unfolding over the last 3 books. Steris is still a great character and a great complement to Wax. Steris is one of those characters that book 1, she really doesn't have enough of a role to be an interesting character. But as in book 2, she really starts to become, oh, this is an interesting character, and then in book 3, you're like, okay, this is one of the best characters that Sanderson has ever written, type thing, and just you really like Steris. I really like Steris by the end of book 3 and continued through book 4. And then Marasi. Marasi really seems to be in a much better place in this book than she has in previous books. She's respected, she understands things, but she is learning that she may not be in her final place as of yet, meaning maybe she doesn't want to just be a cop her whole life. Maybe that's not what she wants. Maybe it's clear that at this point she's out of Wax's shadow as the lawman from the Roughs, and his reputation that Wax has built and that Marasi kind of got dragged into when she started working with him in Alloy of Law. And she's now in a very different place in her life, but she's not sure if she's still trying to decide where exactly she wants to end up. There's also still a lot more exploration of magic happening in this book, which is, to me, is always great, but we also get a lot of Cosmere references in this book. So there's a lot of, obviously, anytime we're learning more lore, learning more history, studying the magic system more so that we can understand better how things work, and then relating that to the greater Cosmere, it's all beneficial. And I did mention that there's a lot of Cosmere connections in this book. And if you're completely caught up on the Cosmere, I'm not. Basically, yes, I am. There's a handful of novellas that I haven't read. Basically, most of Arcanum Unbounded I haven't read, but I understand enough of the Cosmere to understand what's going on. And so, if you're caught up on the Cosmere, you'll enjoy these references. But if you aren't, I think you'll look at them and see them as Cosmere references, but you won't really understand what they mean or what they're referencing. And I don't think that's great. I don't think that's a feature that Sanderson should be proud of. And I understand, I mean, this is who knows how many books into the Cosmere. The whole Cosmere is an entire series. But I feel like you still need to be careful as a writer and when you have an interconnected universe like the Cosmere, you need to still be able to tell self-contained stories within the Cosmere. It is my opinion that if you're going to put references and Easter eggs into a story, it should be done in such a way that they could go unnoticed or at least are genuinely important to the story. Some of the references in The Lost Metal were definitely far more blatant than others, and some were more subtle. Obviously, the more subtle ones I appreciate more, but I don't know that Sanderson's approach to the Cosmere references was appropriate here. Again, this is that idea of, I guess maybe less is more is how I should phrase it. Sometimes having references, Easter eggs that are not so blatant actually benefits a story more than having lots of fan servicey Easter eggs all over the place. And you'll find that this is the case with lots of things. Like a lot of the modern superhero movies are just Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg, or Star Wars. Last Star Wars movie was the same thing, where it's just fan service for the sake of fan service. And that gets in the way of good storytelling sometimes. And that's not to say that Sanderson is a bad storyteller. The one thing that I can never say about him is that he's a bad storyteller, because he's not. He's fantastic. But I feel like he is expecting that people will have read every single one of his books. And they probably will. If you're on book 7 of a series of a Sanderson book, you'll probably understand enough of the rest of the Cosmere that you can read and understand this book, and the Easter eggs don't affect you. But I don't know, I just feel like it should still be a little bit more self-contained. The story itself is rather emotional, though. We see the culminations of character arcs that have been building since book 1. We get answers to questions that we've been needing. There are more and more reveals happening, as there should be in a final book. You should be wrapping things up in a final book in a series. And then, of course, our understanding of the magic system is continuing to grow. Harmony and the Cosmere as a whole are continuing to grow. All these things are good, especially when you are 7th book into a series. You should be getting bigger and bigger, and the effects of things should be having ramifications across the series when you're on book 7 of a series now. I like different aspects of each of the Era 2 books, but I do think overall this book not only felt like a bit of a return to form for Sanderson, but it also may be my favorite of Era 2, and it's hard to judge because every time I think about the 4 books in Era 2, I'm like, but I really like Alloy for this, and I really like Shadows of Self for this, and I really like Bands of Mourning for this, and I really like Lost Metal for this. And I do have a thing where I tend to enjoy endings. I tend to enjoy, because what an ending does for me is it shows me that what everything else had, the journey up to that point was worth it. We get to see why people were making the decisions that they did, and if those decisions make sense with the ending. So an ending really helps to wrap things up, in my opinion. And it, like I mentioned it was in my review of Digitarum, I read books for what they are, not for what I wanted them to be. And so an ending kind of solidifies what the book is. And so for me, that's why I love endings as much as I do. And that's kind of a topic for a different conversation for a different video. I can't think. I should just stick to the script as much as I can. But I do really like endings, though, and seeing how what we've been working towards is finalized. See, that was so much simpler and clearer if I would have just read what I wrote. There's a lot more that I could say about this book, and a lot more that I did say instead of just sticking to my script. But with me having read this several months ago now, and not having written down any thoughts for it, which is unusual, but I'm finding that it happens more and more often, which is not a good thing. I should be writing a Goodreads review every time I finish a book, but I don't, or at least writing thoughts down in my notes app on my phone, which is what I usually do while I'm reading the book. I should be doing that. I didn't with this book. So I can't remember if there are other things that I really wanted to touch on. That's alright, this review is long enough as it is at this point. Still, this was a good book, and as always, Sanderson knows how to tell a story. Even if I find that a lot of his newer works don't align perfectly with my tastes, or as perfectly with my tastes as his older works did. Mistborn Era 1 and the first two Stormlight books are my favorite Sanderson. Favorite anything that he's written. I think that they're just his highest quality. His strengths have changed as a writer since those early books, and the way that he wrote his earlier books align more with my personal tastes than these newer books do. That's fine. This one did feel a little bit like a return to form in many ways though, and I do appreciate that. So anyways, that is my review for The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.